Hi all, Rick here. I'm going to preface this by saying that most of the problems I have with Star Trek Discovery are holdovers from the first season, and I much prefer the direction it eventually went with the Klingons and how they are being represented in Strange New Worlds, which lines up more with TOS and TNG. But divorced from that, let's take a look at one intricate vessel from the Klingon Starfleet War of 2256, the Sarcophagus. Beta Canon did a lot of heavy lifting here to add context to the strange ship, as Beta Canon is wont to do. This information is drawn from the Star Trek Adventures RPG and the prequel Discovery comics. So, for a start, the ship was ancient and not from any contemporary Klingon design. In 2250s, most of the Klingon Empire was feudal and lacked a unified imperial military. Instead, most houses maintained their own style, philosophies and fleets. But the sarcophagus preceded these by at least 200 years, stressing the at least. In the 14th century, the hur'q invaded qo'nos, and it was from them that the Klingon Empire learned alien technology and reverse-engineered much of it. Many of their earliest designs, therefore, were reflective of this alien style. The Sarcophagus ship began life as such a creation of House Georgia, who took a derelict hur'q vessel built for terraforming and colonization and retooled it. It was recreated as an interpretation of Klingon myths of Sto-vo-kor and the Black Fleet of Kahless. The Black Fleet is supposedly made up from Klingons who have achieved an honourable death in combat and man the vessels of the afterlife, where they can engage in eternal conflict, awaiting the day Kahless calls to them once more. Because of this association, the vessel was considered holy. In the 20th century, it seems Klingons still practiced mummification in some aspects, as in order to embody the Black Fleet myth, the Sarcophagus ship was adorned with the literal bodies of warriors. Some were over 1,000 years old, suggesting that this vessel is likely in fact older than 200. The bodies were encased in armoured caskets and set into the hull, adding a morbidly symbolic armour to the ship. From this era of belief, the Klingons of the 24th century only maintain the funeral rites of Akvo to guard over a body, with mummification and honorary tombs being a thing of archaeology now. The House of Georgia were the creators of this ship, which was a mighty vessel for its era but stood more as a symbol for their great house. However, the house fell out of favour with the High Council, and it was denied a seat among them, effectively robbing them of their great status. Eventually, as pariahs, their fortunes faded and the sarcophagus fell into disuse. Around the late 22nd century, T'Kuvma's grandfather devised a rudimentary cloaking screen and added it to the vessel, but it appears to never have had cause to use it, being effectively grounded. When it came to the possession of T'Kuvma's father, he abandoned it entirely, allowing the nearby forests of his estate to consume the landing pad. It may have been left by the houses, but it became a home to those not so fortunate, former wards and servants of House Georgia who had nowhere else to go sheltered here, and by the early 23rd century it had lain derelict for decades, forgotten until T'Kuvma himself stumbled across it again as a child. With the aid of his sister, Ja'ula, Sue planned, in childhood naivety, to repair and fly it to Boreth to meet Kahless. From here, T'Kuvma became infatuated with ancient Klingon history, building not only himself up in the image of ancient Klingon warriors and training on Boreth, but also restoring the sarcophagus. Well, it was mostly his sister who did that part. Earning the loyalty of those abandoned by his house in the past, he spared no expense in upgrading the vessel with contemporary weapons, engines, shields and more, even restoring the cloaking screen to working order. House Mokai eventually made a move to claim the remains of Georgia, and T'Kuvma left to form his own house. It was at this time that he added the coffins of every member of his house and his allies to the vessel. By 2250, the Sarcophagus was not only spaceworthy again, but an impressively powerful ship in its own right, achieved by diverting his house fortunes into a single project rather than creating a more expansive fleet. The vessel's purpose was to act as a reminder of Klingon past glory, and to search out the Beacon of Kalis, which took years to accomplish. T'Kuvma and his crew were considered a bunch of zealots for most of their life, until his unifying rally leading to the Battle of the Binary Stars. With T'Kuvma's death in battle, the ship fell to House Core until it was lost in 2257 after its cloaking screen was cracked by Starfleet. So, on to its capabilities and stats. The ship was well over 600 metres long, apparently, but Trek sizing on screen kicks in again, making it far larger, but written sources say just over 600 metres. Internally, the ship retained a dedicated ceremonial burial room for interring the dead and placing them onto the hull. The main bridge was on several layers and doubled as a room to conduct sermons in, and parts of its interior were made from carved stone rather than bulkheads of metal. All this goes to reinforce the ceremonial function of this ship over its practicality. The vessel had few actual interfaces in terms of computer panels, with ceremonial masks containing interactive heads-up displays. In fact, the sarcophagus was a reliquary of ancient gear with older armour, back-left designs and ornate ceremonial daggers, rather than the standardised armaments of later Klingon defence forces. Alongside the remains of its Black Fleet and ancient hur'q lineage, this ship really did belong in a museum. Large parts of the sarcophagus's frame were constructed of a reflective mineral substance that acted to scatter scans, aiding in the stealth aspect of it, something that was a part of its structure since its hur'q origin. Most of the ornate gold embellishments were added by the Klingons. Internal lighting was blocked out, and the stealth screen was added to cloak it. As said though, this was far from a perfect cloak. Layering over the ship was the armoured mineral caskets, which were built from quarried crystals from qo'nos. These added a minor layer of protection, but in all reality, layered duranium would have been a better choice, but hey, it has both and its symbolism. Of course, it maintained powerful shields too. The symbolism doesn't stop phasers. In terms of armaments, the vessel was carrying enough firepower to level a planet's surface in both disruptors and photon torpedoes, standard Klingon fare. It had 8 main disruptor cannons and at least 6 other turrets. It carried the classic Klingon photon torpedo launcher that they placed right in the middle of the deflector array, as well as several rear-facing launchers. It also made use of several underslung tractor beam emitters along the neck and keel. The size of the nacelles shows how old the vessel is, as the rugged warp systems of older ships were simply bigger. However, the upgrades allowed for the installation of smaller warp coils and backup reactors were added, allowing for longer-term power supply. These new upgrades, however, were not enough to prevent its stranding for 6 months, and it could only achieve warp 7 on the old scale at maximum. So, when I first saw this vessel, I really did not think it resembled anything Klingon except its silhouette, vaguely. A pretty common sentiment with Discovery Klingons. However, the addition of lore to retroactively explain it does a lot for me, and I have a new appreciation for it. Thanks to the inclusion of notable architectural styles from our real world, the Ship of the Dead really does appear ancient, looking more like a flying building or cathedral than a starship. The explanation that it used to be hur'q before being converted by ancient Klingons, and then seeing even more alterations by generations of a history-focused Klingon group of zealots, adds to its unique flavour for me as a one-off flagship, and it's kinda cool. Heavily impractical, of course, but still cool. I realise most of this video was dedicated to the story of the sarcophagus, but you know what? I'm calling that thematic, because after all, this ship was a piece of Klingon history, a living, restored relic, made into one man's symbolic vision for the Empire, and that was its whole point. As a flagship, sure, it's formidable, but no more so than others we've seen. So, thanks for watching this breakdown of the Sarcophagus, the Ship of the Dead. Until the next video, I've been Rick, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.